What sort of issues are people coming to you with? Do you see a
Okay.
broad range of things that are stressing them out?
I see sometimes it is situation specific. Sometimes people come in with relationship concerns. People can come in as a result of having difficulties in their childhoods. I see plenty of people who have been in motor vehicle accidents. I actually have a psychological supervisor. This is something I can tell you about, that it's encouraged for everybody who practices counseling and psychotherapy to be in supervision. And the purpose of that is to have, it's almost like counseling for the counselor. It's making sure that the counselor or the person providing psychotherapy is able to keep their own baggage in check. Almost like, you could almost say that my job is, the job of the supervisor is to help me keep my baggage out there in the waiting room with a magazine so that I can be the best person possible while I'm working with any given client, so that I can be as available to them as humanly possible. And also the supervisor is there because sometimes even the best counselors and people providing psychotherapy can get stuck. And they can need some guidance to help sort of steer them along. And as such, I have two supervisors, one who is also a registered social worker and one who is a registered psychologist. And through the registered psychologist, I get a lot of referrals for people who've experienced motor vehicle accidents.
Yeah. So when someone comes to see you, what can they expect?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
What they can expect is, first, on the first day, they can expect to, I will introduce myself and I will let them know what my background is. I will let them know, I will explain to them how the process works. I will let them know that they are the main participant in this in the counseling process, and as such, it's important that they ask any questions that they need to ask. I'll let them know that at any time, if a subject comes up that they're not comfortable talking about, they have the right to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable about talking about that right now. And at that point, I have to accept that, because it's not about forcing someone before they're ready. I'll let them know that, if ever they need to end a session early, that's okay. It's important that they always feel comfortable. I'll encourage them to ask any questions they have along the way. I will encourage them to also participate as much as possible, because it's very important that they contribute. And also, I'm going to let them know about confidentiality, that there are some limits on confidentiality, and based on certain rules, that if I find out somebody is in imminent risk of harming themselves or somebody else, I have to get someone involved. If I find out that a child under the age of 16 is being abused or witnessing extreme domestic violence, I have to call Children's Aid. If I find out another healthcare practitioner has engaged in this conduct, I have to call their regulatory body to let them know. And in the very unlikely circumstance that somebody has committed, the client has committed a crime, and the courts issue a subpoena, either from the Crown or the defense, asking for certain parts of the case file. I have to give them what's requested in the subpoena. But other than that, confidentiality means that I don't share information that they share with me, except with my supervisor as part of supervision. But my supervisors are under the same rules of confidentiality that I am. So basically, it's between myself, them, the supervisor, and the walls. Now, I'm not going to tell my family. I'm not going to tell my friends. And let's just say somebody's spouse calls and says, I want to know what's being talked about. And the rule basically is not unless I get written permission from my client.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So while we're talking about confidentiality, obviously we don't want to talk about any of your patients today, but I'd like to talk overall just about what kinds of things have you helped people with, because there may be people watching who are struggling with stress, anxiety, something else, and they just wonder if counseling could be helpful to them.
Okay. Basically, I'd say that, just to start off with, if you are experiencing any form of discomfort, whether it be stress, anxiety, depression, challenges in a relationship or in various relationships in your life, and it's starting to impact your enjoyment of life, or it's starting to make you feel uncomfortable or concerned, then that may be a good time to call someone. A lot of people will stand back and go, no, I'm not going to call a therapist. I'm not going to call a counselor. That means I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that myth still exists?
Very much so.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because I think we could all use help improving our lives.
To some extent, yeah. I found that, there's probably something going on with all of us that could probably be tweaked a little just by talking it out. And really, that's one of the great things that a counselor or therapist can do. They're there to be someone who provides unconditional regard, is there in your corner, and is there to act as a sounding board without judgment. And at the same time, to support you empathetically. And that's something we don't get out there in the real world, the world out the window, where everybody's into their own heads, and people's abilities to understand the person in front of them is limited to their own, where their own ego is at the moment. And the idea is that my job is to suspend my ego as much as humanly possible so that I can be there for you as you need me to be in that moment. And that is probably something that we could all use about something. I think of so many times people might be struggling with grief. I've helped them with that. How many times people have been struggling with their relationships, either with family members or partners or kids, and I've been there for that. How many times people have been trying to figure out how they're going to navigate the workplace and the complications there, and that's something else that I can be there for. These are normal everyday problems, but they start to add up and they start to become stress. And then over time, maybe they might start adding up to being something even more intense. And if you start to deal with it while it's just a little thing, it doesn't really get a chance to get up there to become a big thing.
What can you offer that their friends or family can't offer them?
What I mainly can offer is sort of going back to the suspending of the ego. I might ask you a question. If you've ever talked to friends or family about a concern you're having, and maybe even in the middle of a sentence you get, what you need to do is, and you don't even get to get your full idea out. And if you attempt to get more out and explain, it's like, no, you're not hearing me. What you need to do is, if you listen to me, it's going to be fine. But maybe you're kind of feeling on the inside like, yeah, but what I'm talking about is important to me. And you're not hearing the most important parts. And now I'm feeling silenced, or now I'm being told, now I feel like I'm being told to shut up and just do what I'm told. So, and maybe I am thinking about this wrong. And maybe if I just did what this person said, maybe I just, maybe I'd be better able to handle this, but now I feel kind of stupid and a bit ashamed and wish I'd never said anything. The next time I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to keep it all to myself. And the person who was giving you the advice had all the best intentions in the world. And yet that person didn't have the training or the understanding that when someone is coming to them with a concern, they need to be quiet and they need to listen and they need to put their needs and their judgments over to the side and just be present and listen. And then when it's time to give feedback, just be prepared to give it non-judgmentally and to not have it be about them, because quite often it's like, what you need to do is probably closer to what that person would want to have done, or what that person feels they would want in that situation. Well, what if that isn't good for you? What if that isn't good for me?
And that's, I think, a big part of what you learn when you're becoming a social worker, a counselor, is how to not bring your ego into it.
Exactly.
And, right? Yeah, and that's a huge difference.
And when you do accidentally bring your ego into it, because we're all human and we will do it, to step back and realize it and then say, oh, you know what? I think I just sort of maybe stepped on your toes a little there. So I'm going to take a step back. And so learning how to self-monitor while you're doing the work.
What can people expect in terms of, I guess it depends on them. They might come to see you every week. They might come to see you when they need it.
It's generally, to start, it's encouraged for once a week. Depending on the situation, maybe twice, but generally once a week. And then as the situation starts to improve, maybe a couple times a week or once a month. And eventually it sort of dwindles down a bit, so that maybe give it a check, give a check-in maybe once every 6 months, and then depending on the situation, maybe sort of say, okay, at this point it looks like everything is going okay. You're always welcome to come back if you have any concerns about this or other concerns. And it was great working with you, and I'd be happy to work with you again should you need it.
Yeah.